say something for your roll call. When he calls your neighborhood, please identify who you are, such as I'm Brig Franklin with Curtin Creek neighborhood, so that we can see a face and a name with the roll call. And there may be two people from the same neighborhood, so we need to find that out. Just like Kim and I are both from Curtin Creek. Thank you. Now you call roll, please.
Thank you. Salachi Prairie. Ryan Ross, I'm sorry, Earl Shelvin. Jonathan Stafford. Nobody here. Curtin Creek. Kim.
And Brig Franklin. I didn't sign in.
That's okay, I won't hold it against you.
No rules.
East Fork Alliance. Jim? Anybody? Was that Jim tapping in?
No.
Okay. East Fork Hills Rural. Salida Community, John?
Here,
And Karina is with you?
Yes.
and so is Doug online.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yeah. Four Creeks. Andrew. Maple Tree, Jordan.
President. Hi,
Hi.
And your name is what?
Jordan, he called my name,
Yeah.
so that's why I didn't feel the
Well,
need to
Jordan
say it.
Johnson. Gotcha. Meadowglade.
Roger Andrew.
John Schroeder here.
Sorry,
Is John Schroeder here?
no,
He's listed as the president.
Just me.
Is he still okay? I am here and Stephen is here.
Thank you,
From
Mark.
Northeast Hazeldale.
And what was your name, sir?
Bill Klein.
Thank you.
North Fork.
Heavy Ring President.
North Salmon Creek. Ed?
Nope.
Nope. Pleasant Highlands. Debbie?
Yeah, this is Debbie Troop.
Anybody else from your neighborhood?
No,
Okay. Kirk is here from Probstill.
Probstill, Kirk, president.
That's okay. Ridgefield Junction. Sherwood Hills, Vicky. Bridget no longer is here, so Sunnyside, Judy.
Judy Bumgarger Enright, chairperson, and my husband Dan is here.
Hey, Dan.
West Hazeldale. Brendan here? Okay.
Me, can
Here.
I?
Commissioner or counselor, excuse me, Glenn Young. Anybody else?
Tyler was wanting to say something.
I was always wanting to.
Did you hear that, Arla?
Yeah, I did, thanks.
Something, Isla. You're muted, sweetheart. Okay, I'll take that as I don't want to say anything, so we've got. We only have 8, we do not have a quorum. Okay.
Okay. Everybody's been introduced. And we don't really have any county partners here except for Merrill Lee.
We have a counselor
We
here.
have a
Glenn,
counselor.
Oh, where is Glenn?
Up there.
Oh, sorry. I see your hand now there, Glenn. Did you have something to communicate to everybody?
I don't really have anything tonight. I've got a car full of kids too, so you might get a little bit more than you bargained for. So I'll just put myself back on mute and listen in.
Okay,
Appreciate you being here.
yeah, welcome. Okay, so then the first order of agenda business is the conflict resolution committee. Who do we have from the committee?
All three of us.
All three of them.
Debbie's online.
Okay, our question, Marilee, will we be able to vote on our proposals then?
We do
There
not
won't
have
be
a
able to
quorum.
hold a vote because there's not a quorum.
But we should go ahead with the presentation.
I think you should go ahead with the presentation.
Okay, okay, we can do that.
And then you're gonna start us anyway, Marilee. Okay, I want to make one point and then, I wanted to make one point and then the committee wanted me to make one point. The point that I wanted to make was I did not see this presentation until today. When they sent it to me so that I could put it onto the screen. So I did not see the recommendations of the committee or participate in the recommendations of the committee because this is not a county process. This was a process for this committee. They did call me with a few questions to ask for some clarifications, but I didn't participate in their process. They did ask me to make a clarifying statement because with some of the questions that they asked and the clarifying statement that they wanted me to make was that there had been some complaints made prior to these complaints. These complaints were formal complaints that were made in writing. The complaints that were made prior to this were just verbal complaints that were not taken all the way to being formal. And they wanted me to clarify that prior to them proceeding with their presentation. Does that Yeah.
cover what you wanted me to say?
Yes.
Okay. And so they made a formal, like a PowerPoint presentation, because they're really fancy. So I'm going to.
Can I say one thing before you get going just on that?
Okay.
Because I would like to thank all three of them for your time and effort on this project. I do appreciate the time and effort. And you too, Deb, on screen, but thank you.
Let's see. This is gonna take me a second here.
And it is fancy.
Yeah. Because now I've got to like end this so that I can.
While she's doing that, the other thing that we set out, because when we were given this task, we had no process. There was nothing really outlined other than make recommendations. So as we get into it, because of the nature of the complaints, we felt being more transparent was better than being less. So I just kept a timeline. I was our official secretary. So that's what this is. I wasn't gonna read through this. This was just kind of the back and forth and like our process in an outline. So you guys knew kind of what we did and how we went about it without a whole lot of detail, I guess. And like some of the questions we asked Marilee and kind of how that process went are on there. If you so choose to read them, that's where that is.
Nice, thank you.
Okay, can the people that are online see the presentation now?
Can you see that, Debbie?
Yeah, it's clear.
Yeah, it's clear here.
Okay, awesome. I just wanted to make sure that you could see it. And hang on one second because I don't think okay, I am recording. I just wanted to make sure that it's recording. Okay. And I wanted to make sure that I'm announcing to everybody that it is recording. Because I don't think that we did that. Did we forget to do that, Bill?
I forgot to do it too.
Okay, so we are recording.
Okay. All right, so we are the Neighborhood Association Council Clark County. We are the Conflict Resolution Committee. My name is Brig Franklin. I'm Vice President of Curtin Creek Neighborhood. Eve is sitting here with me, and she is President of the North Fork Neighborhood. And Debbie is up there on the screen. She is President of Pleasant Hills. Of what?
Pleasant Highlands.
Pleasant Highlands, Hills, Highlands, okay. So we have met several times, we met online some, and then we met a couple of times in person, which the in-person meetings were much better. Page 2, please. Okay, this is a summary which I'm going to read to you, and then Eve is going to go through each individual page, individual thing. So This is just a summary. 1, the executive board issues a formal apology to complaint number 1. That's a recommendation. Number 2, form a new NACCC committee to draft new NAC bylaws and a new NAC meeting format. Okay, number 3, hold NAC board elections following the bylaw update, and to take effect immediately after the update. And number 4, neighborhood program coordinator Mary McCall should facilitate all NAC meetings until after the board elections. Number 4. With that, we can go to the next page. And
So they're kind of getting cut off a little bit, but I'll read through these. So we summarized the complaints. The complainants asked to remain anonymous. So there was 2 formal complaints filed. Each one of those complaints had multiple complaints in them. The first one was complaint number 1, complaint of unprofessional and demeaning behavior by members of the NAC executive board. This was specifically regarding interactions at the January 13th NAC meeting, which was recorded and we were able to actually go back and listen to. And then the second part of complainant number 1 was that there was just a generally unwelcome atmosphere at the NAC board meetings or at these NAC meetings toward that specific person and toward specific neighborhood associations. So that was basically the summary of complainant number 1. And then we're going to go summarize complainant number 2. We did it this way because their complaints overlapped. They were similar in some regard. So we're going to go to the next slide, Marilee. So complainant number 2 had 4 basic complaints: an unwelcoming atmosphere, a lack of communication between the NAC and their specific neighborhood association. They also complained that they felt NAC was holding unofficial board meetings. I put perceived to have taken place in private outside of NAC monthly meetings. And then the 4th part kind of had 4 complaints: violation of bylaws and policy, that the NAC executive, when they transferred the vice chair position from Isla to Kirk, that wasn't done correctly, that the NAC board was combining treasurer and secretary positions, which was not allowed by the bylaws, that inactive neighborhood associations had been allowed to vote, and that they were giving non-members preferences over members or the board interrupting members during conversations. So that's were the official complaints that we were dealing with. When we go through our why we recommended, we combined complainant number 1 and complainant number 2 together on the unwelcoming atmosphere, lack of communication, because they were essentially complaining about the same things. So getting into our first formal recommendation on the next slide is that we went back and listened to that board meeting, and I pulled this quote from what Marilee sent us, that NAC members are expected to treat each other with mutual respect and civility when participating in general NAC meetings or as representation of NAC, representative of NAC in public access. I emphasize that part. Going back and listening to that meeting, that policy was pretty clearly violated in 1 or 2 instances in there. So we did feel like even though that the board currently consists of slightly different members than it did in January, that the board should go back and listen to that, and that we would work with them to write a formal apology for the particular complaints that were in there. So we didn't put any of that in here because the complainant wanted to remain anonymous. So that will be something that if this is voted on at some point, that the board needs to make an apology, we'll go back personally and work with the board to do that to keep the complainant anonymous. And then this probably can't happen because we can't actually vote tonight, but our vote was that apology needs to be read at the next meeting so that everyone can hear that apology. So that's basically our first recommendation right there. Does anybody have any questions on that?
yeah, if you have questions, raise your
Yeah,
hand.
so we're gonna stop there and then, okay, yeah.
Can you go back merely to the previous slide? So. Just looking at, no, okay, actually, it would be the next slide forward, sorry.
Well, we'll go back. That was just the summary. So the summary of the complaint, you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it was, so my question is, were these things checked out because the executive board did not transfer the position.
So we're gonna go through these, and we went back and looked at all these. These were some of the clarifying questions. So when we go through the slides, we'll
Okay.
pull these back up and we'll go through our recommendations for each of these
Okay,
complaints.
thank you.
We just wanted to summarize the complaints in general, but yeah, we'll get to that. Because yeah, and that was some of our clarification questions for Marilee were about those specific things that meeting wasn't recorded. So we couldn't go back and listen to it or review it. So we had to get
Sure.
Marilee, this is what happened at that meeting from that. So, and we'll go through that when we get there. We just kind of went through in sequential order.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Because I'm seeing some issues there, so.
So,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So, all right, so we combined complainant number 1, item 2, complainant number 2, items 1 and 2. So we kind of stuck them all together because they basically dealt with the unwelcoming atmosphere and lack of communication. So our recommendation for this was, after hashing this out quite a bit between the 3 of us, was to form to form a new committee from this. And 1 or 2 of us who know what all of the complaints are, know what all of it was about, would be on that committee, as well as at least 2 or 3 other people from NAC. So to hopefully as many neighbor associations represented as possible on that committee. And the committee would do a couple things. The committee would look over the bylaws and come up with a new set of bylaws and come up with a formal meeting format on how these NAC meetings would go. We had a proposed timeline on here. Obviously, it's just proposed and this can't happen because we can't actually vote tonight. But that committee would actually be formed tonight. If we had volunteers, make that committee tonight, get started on drafting the new bylaws and looking at that stuff. And then go over those at the next couple NAC meetings. Hopefully vote on the new bylaws in August and then do board nominations in August, board elections in September. Obviously, that timeline's probably not going to happen because we can't vote tonight. So, and we have some recommendations for, which is what the next couple slides are, for that we will give to that committee. Because we came up with a lot of things that were like, we didn't feel like we could recommend 18 different bylaw changes. That was too much. So we're like, a committee of NAC needs to look at this and needs to go over some of these details that we as the conflict resolution committee didn't feel like we could just flat out recommend, and it was just too much. So I have notes in here so that in the era of transparency, you all would know what the couple of us that come off the conflict resolution committee would be recommending, would be talking to that committee about. Does that kind of make sense? And then part of that, the unwelcome atmosphere and lack of communication at these meetings, we thought it might be helpful to have Marilee facilitate the meetings, which doesn't necessarily mean nobody else gets to talk, but since Marilee already does the agenda, already kind of knows what's going on, to have a more active role in facilitating those as we go through the process of the bylaws and that kind of thing.
I'm pretty sure that the Marilee's not able to do that as a county employee, but I have to look that a little bit deeper. For sure. I know there's separation there, so.
Okay, so some of the recommendations we had for the bylaws with the committee would look at both the current NAC bylaws and then the charter bylaws and use both of those documents. Don't try to start from scratch. Use what we already have, use the work that's already been done, look at those 2 documents and try to see if there's a way to make them a more cohesive, like one document, come to some sort of agreement on those. And then we also felt like whether this is in the bylaws or this is just a process, that there needs to be a welcome process for new neighbor associations. That could be not necessarily a bylaw, but like I said, some sort of like outline process. Then there was some ideas thrown around about that, about giving them a mentor neighborhood association, having them meet with the NAC board before they come to a NAC meeting, those kind of things. The NAC board needs better communication with the neighborhood associations. I didn't even have Steve's email. Part of the timeline, I had to email Kirk because I found Kirk's online. And I was like, Kirk, can you send me Steven? I didn't end up needing to communicate with Steven, but I realized I didn't even have it. And I've been on the neighborhood association for 2.5 years. So clearly that's missing component of all of that. And then we also felt like as part of that, we originally had gone and said we should recommend that the at-large positions be communication and welcome advisor positions. We sort of took that back and we're like, okay, let the committee figure out. But someone we felt on the board or a volunteer member of NAC needs to be in charge of making sure communication happens. making sure that everyone who's on the email list is on the email list. Like Brig wanted to be on the email list to get like the NAC agendas. He's not on there, but Kim is. So the president is, but the vice president's not. So making sure that the neighborhood associations aren't falling through the cracks, aren't not getting emails, aren't not getting communications. And having somebody work directly with Marilee on that, so two people aren't doing the same thing. And then also having someone be in charge of welcoming welcoming the new neighborhood associations, making sure people show up for the first time, that we know who they are, we know why they're here, that kind of thing, to actually have a designated person that does that.
I might say, I've been here now for 4 meetings and I still haven't had a welcoming from anybody. So I now feel part of it, but you know, it would be nice that first meeting for somebody to say, welcome and here's what we do and that sort of thing.
If it makes you feel better, you're not the only one. And my first experience with this group was not a positive one.
So, which is why we thought if somebody just volunteered to do that every NAC meeting, or if it was a member of the board, either way, that's why we're like, somebody else needs to talk about this and make that decision. We also will strongly recommend that the draft of the bylaws be whenever that's comes up is ran through county legal. In the past, that has happened. The last bylaw adoption, that did not happen. So part of recommendation, yes, that should be on there.
Okay.
Do you need to go back?
Something happened. And I'm not sure.
You're not in presentation mode. There you go.
Okay. there we
And
go.
up for discussion.
Trying to move. this.
I'll move that out of the way.
Yeah.
Trying to do, and when I tried to move it, then it just did something that I didn't want it to do at all.
The last recommendation on there is probably going to be a controversial one, but this is another talk to Marilee. To have the neighborhood program coordinator be on the NAC board. So that's a discussion. That's like what we said. It's a discussion where all of these are things that we're going to give to the new committee to discuss. So they're not. If you vote for the new committee, you aren't voting for all these recommendations. We just wanted to make sure you knew part of the process that we went through.
Gotta be transparent.
So being transparent in the suggestions, and that was it. That's all, that's pretty much was most of our notes that we would hand off to the new committee.
Nice job, thank you. Marilee, I have a question for you. Because I've sat through a couple other advisory kind of boards, like the bicycle and pedestrian. I showed up in person and watched them, and they just seem to be more, I know it's a different situation, but it just seems more professional, if that makes sense. It seems like they meet in the courthouse downtown, and there's a chairperson and a vice chairperson, but they just seem to have a little bit more organization. Are we that kind of facility? Are we under that kind of a umbrella like them? Are we different? Does that make sense what I'm saying?
When we went through this last review to determine what you guys were and weren't.
Yeah.
It was that you were not.
Okay,
And that's why it's not as organized.
thank you. I just was curious because, like I said, I've done 2 now where I've sat through and I'm like, wow, that, you know, everyone seems to have their stuff organized and nice, and you know, they have a county person like that, but it's just ran just a little bit more business-like. So that's what I was.
The advisory committees are set up differently.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
That's
Okay.
what,
But
yeah.
previously it was run that way, even though it wasn't set up that way.
Okay.
It's not structured that way paperwork wise, but it was run that way.
Which is also why we made the recommendation that we should look at the meeting format as part of that committee. So Karina, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think any organization has an ability, regardless of what governing form they have, to be a certain way, and that could be more professional for us. We just have to create it.
Yeah. I was just curious. I was just, because I've been through 2 of them now, and the difference is pretty major.
Put it in the
Did you
bylaw.
have anything else, Greg?
No.
Okay, just checking before I
Yep.
moseyed on here.
Okay,
All right.
sorry.
So complainant number 2, item 3, exclusive and unofficial board meetings. Obviously, like we had no record of any of those. So according to the bylaws, the current bylaws, the NAC executive board has the ability to meet outside of the monthly meetings. However, we do recommend that the neighborhood association should be notified of these meetings in advance, and neighborhood association board members should be welcome to attend. There's no reason why I, as the president of Northport Neighborhood Association, should be able to attend a NAC board meeting if there's something that I, felt like needed, I would be there for. If the board determines the need for a closed door meeting, the neighborhood association should still be notified of that meeting, and that meeting is occurring and the general topic about what's going to be discussed. And if the executive board meetings, if there are executive board meetings outside of this, all members of the executive board need to be aware of the meeting and reasonable accommodations made that all of them should be able to attend. None of us have ever served on the board, so it was kind of hard for us to really pin down how much of this actually had happened. So that's kind of where we were coming from. And then any executive board meetings occurring outside of this meeting should have meeting notes taken. And those notes should be available to the neighborhood association presidents, neighborhood association boards, whoever's on the board. And those meeting notes shouldn't come 3 months later. They should be pretty readily available. It's super easy to type up quick notes. It shouldn't take months for those to be available to anybody who asks for them or requests them. Same thing about meeting notes from these monthly meetings. They should be in the bylaws. It does say that they should be taken and that they should be electronically distributed. I can't remember. I don't have the thing right in front of me. But so basically, part of the bylaw update reflects the neighborhood's desire to inform the executive board meetings. That should be in the bylaws, that those meeting notes are taken and are available for any NAC meeting that happens.
And sounds like a secretary.
Do you want a response to any of this?
Yeah, if you have it, yeah.
So our board meetings are open. They've always been open. They've been set on a specific day of the month.
But does anybody know about, no, because I didn't know when they took place. I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's that communication piece. We don't know what's going on. So it
Sure.
feels like it's closed door, I think was the complaint is.
Yeah,
Perspective.
it hasn't been at all. So they're held monthly and
In general,
generally the third Thursday of
Right.
the month by Zoom. So
Are they a Zoom?
there's Zoom and the Zoom invitations are sent out by Maryland.
Yeah.
So again, that's part of the communication piece that seems to be lacking. So so this is, I think, what Kirk was pointing out earlier. So the NAC board, the vice chair transfer from Isla to Kirk that happened, I think it was in November. I didn't put the date on here. The meeting wasn't recorded. Primarily, that vote was taken by a show of hands and it was fine.
There was an election.
So there was an
Remember
election.
it, there was.
It
an
went
election.
through.
that we did.
Merrily did not have any sort of issue with how that vote went about. So we had no way to prove or disprove and didn't make a recommendation on that because we couldn't really. There was no concrete proof either way, other than we took Merrily's word that it was done
Kirk was the only
appropriately.
candidate.
Yeah, Kirk was the only candidate. There was a vote. That's the way it went.
It was by consensus.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that. Then I have a question for you as far as transparency and things. So I know is Flida here? Are you guys Flida?
Yeah.
So Flida and Marilee, you guys have been working on a project with the county transportation, but that has never been shared with any of us in the last 6 months or so.
It's not a NAC issue.
Oh, it's not a NAC issue.
No,
Well,
it's
they're
just-
making it a NAC issue.
Who is?
The county. I was told by Harrison that there's a program coming down
It
from,
wouldn't be our program.
well, I got you,
Yeah.
but it was started. I'm just saying to you, it was something that you guys were discussing. I don't know how it all went down. I'm just telling you, I was told by Harrison because I went to the comp plan and I was telling him about some issues we had in our neighborhood. And he said there was a new one that you guys came up with, Marilee. So are you aware of that, Marilee?
Yeah, Harrison's using you guys as a example of a way to gather information and as a place to go to for information of how
The
to.
process for the survey.
Best practice.
Of the
Okay, so it feels like
process.
there's a little bit of misunderstanding
Well,
there.
but the way that I understood it, so maybe there is one that was with you guys working with Marilee that this happened. Is that correct?
No.
They actually did it all, but they
Oh, so-
actually did it all on their own and they did a
Harrison kind of
fantastic
like
job.
told me a little something
Yeah, they-
different, because,
And they should present what they did at NAC because
well,
it
I
was
totally agree,
fantastic.
because I'm
Yeah.
just telling you the rumors going around. So,
And I think that too is the meeting format part of that too, to give an opportunity for the neighborhood associations
Which I
to
think is
share
great.
what they're doing or what they need help with, or to get more of that, like, camaraderie is not the right word.
Maybe that's what.
But-
Yeah, just
Yeah.
to respond to that is that
Yeah,
it's not a project that we were working on really with Merrily. It was our neighborhood association, our community said they had some issue with traffic and safety and wanted some better improved traffic
Welcome to the
calming
world,
design. So we were able to, they voted to create a subcommittee, and then they started working on different ways to collect data. And then from that, we said, okay, we have all this data. Then we asked Merrily, what can we do with this? Then that program was already in the works, and we were introduced to what that planning would have looked like, and that when it would come to fruition, what we would be able to maybe do.
But I guess that's how I'm saying is that we need, as a neighborhood, so all of us need to work together on those little you know what I mean? Because I think that's great and fantastic.
That's what our argument was,
I like-
where NAC was not, the entity themselves, NAC. It's kind of an oxymoron, where it truly does not represent the voices of the ideas of the people they're supposedly representing. I love your idea, because that's what we would like to see more of, a collective input. What are you doing? Well, we're doing the same thing, but why is yours working?
Right,
Best practices.
right.
So you're not reinventing the wheel each time a new board member comes on.
But then that's just my next question to you. Who sets the NAC agenda?
The board sets the agenda generally. Merrily sent this last one out, so.
Because sometimes, I 100% agree with you, because sometimes I think we're heavily on the county information. So, not, like we had Harrison come and he talked, he didn't talk about that specific thing. I guess I've seen Harrison a lot lately. But he came and presented. I would prefer more of our meetings to be like this, like, what are you guys doing? Because we all have those issues. I could go around to every neighborhood and we all have those issues with our traffic, right? So I think it's wonderful what you guys did.
Wouldn't it be nice if
We all
the
did that.
NAC meetings actually involved the neighborhood associations and did exactly what we and you are now representing?
Yeah.
It's the board themselves should not be the ones that set the agenda. It should be collective.
Well, I think personally, I would prefer just to sit around and discuss neighborhoods than I would have a county representative up there and give me a 45-minute or 35-minute,
We could bring in a county representative based on
what we're talking
at
about.
that time.
Good, okay.
so
Right.
good discussion. That's why we thought we were going to be a committee to
Yes.
decide what do we want meetings to look
Just
like.
so
We can get back
everyone
on here.
knows, there's always been roundtable on our agenda for the last half hour, 20 minutes to 30 minutes at every meeting for that. And we also ask very regularly, what do you want? What do you want next month? What do you want 3 months down the road and all? So it's not like the board is holding this hostage at all. So
Well, we hardly
we
ever
love that.
enforce the timeline set on the agenda.
hey, there's room for improvement. I agree with you. So.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, I understand what you're doing, and it's kind of reminds me of like when I set up my neighborhood association meeting, I'm just learning, again, only 2.5 years into it, learning how to run my meetings outside of this meeting. And I want to make sure I'm doing it correctly too. And it is a hit and miss, I think, situation of, listening to our community, and then presenting what they want to be presented. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, back on track.
Yeah, all right.
So the combining of the treasurer and secretary position was complained about. The bylaws didn't say you couldn't do it. And we went through, that was one of my questions that I messaged her. NAC has no money. There is no bank account. There are no funds. The only thing that was ever, money was asked to collect, it was for the donated for the Outstanding Employee of the Year award. And then that was just reimbursed. So, and Steve bought it and the money reimbursed
It's
it.
always been.
It never went anywhere else. So basically, our recommendation was update the bylaws to reflect what we want them to be. Personally, we did not, or personally, our committee did not feel like combining the secretary and treasurer position really was a big deal because there's no money. So as far as we were concerned, we thought the bylaws could actually just be updated to reflect that the treasurer could be the vice president and the treasurer or whatever it was, vice chair. So
Question,
we didn't super recommend anything on that. Yes.
is there a secretary?
Yes.
Well, we have a
We have a
temporary
acting
secretary,
secretary.
an acting secretary, Mr. Klein, which is again why, when we circle back, we recommended that we, after the bylaws are updated, if we decide to do that, that the board be reelected, so that the positions that that committee comes up with are defined for one, and that people would know, like, what are we actually doing? I'm the secretary and this is my job, or I'm whatever person, and I'm the vice chair, and now I'm going to be the welcome person, or I'm going to have these responsibilities. So that it would be more clear who's doing what and for what reasons. So.
It sounds like what you're saying is it would be beneficial to hold another election and to clearly define their duties.
Yes, but we didn't feel like we should hold an election tonight because we felt like the bylaws need to be updated first and then
Can't
do
hold
that.
one tonight.
Does that
You
make
don't
sense?
have a quorum,
We don't have a
right?
quorum either, so we can't even vote on what we're recommending, but
Yeah.
we're gonna proceed anyway, because
Okay.
that's what we're doing.
No, good.
Allowing inactive neighborhood associations to vote. The bylaws, I mean, they say each active neighborhood association gets one vote, which to me means non-active neighborhood associations can't vote. Like, that's what it says. So there was no meeting record that had a recorded vote of a non-active neighbor association voting. So we could not prove or disprove this really. So again, the committee should, in the bylaws, it should clearly be stated, non-active neighbor associations cannot vote. Another one of the recommendations, like I had in here, like in my notes, was that new neighborhood associations can attend, because I attended 2 NAC board meetings before our neighborhood association was officially active. Those meetings, the people I met at those meetings were integral in me starting my neighborhood association, super helpful. I didn't vote, I didn't attempt to vote, I sat there and I don't even think I said anything, I just listened. So if we want to encourage neighbor associations that are trying to become active again, or are new, to come to the NAC meetings, to meet people, to interact, but make sure they don't vote, they can't vote, right? Like, that seems pretty clear. I cannot
do have a
remember your
question.
name, what's your question?
Jordan,
Sorry.
what do you mean when you say inactive neighborhood?
Okay, so North Fork Neighbor Association, I will use us as an example. They were a neighbor association in like 99 to 2001. It went inactive. Their board said, okay, we quit, we're done, nobody's running us anymore. It was a neighborhood association. It went inactive until 2022 when I emailed Marilee and was like, hey, can we start this again? And she's like, get a board. And so we reactivated the North Fork Neighborhood Association.
If I may answer Jordan's
And then
question,
Kirk
the bylaws specify that you have to have at least one meeting a year. If you don't, then you go inactive.
Yes. So, or if you no longer have anyone to run those meetings, you
Sure.
quit having meetings, your neighborhood association, it sort of exists on the internet, like there still might be a web page for it. It's still linked in like
But it's not, yeah.
the tree of neighborhood associations, like it's still listed there. It just says it's inactive.
So the people on the list that he called, the neighborhoods who did not say, I'm here,
No,
whatever.
they're just not present. They're active neighborhood associations. They just don't have a representative here. If you look at the neighborhood website, so currently inactive, like there's a couple of them, like East Minnehaha, inactive, Enterprise Paradise, inactive, Greater Brush Prairie Heritage, they're all inactive. They were neighborhood associations at one time that are currently not having meetings, currently don't have anything. Is there anything else to add to that, Marilee?
Well, I guess I have another screw to put into this. And I just maybe a question to add to the pile, is that we have a couple of neighborhoods that are active, but that never come. And the group has always had it be that if they're active, they're automatically a member. But we've got, I think, 3 active neighborhoods that are technically members, but they never ever come. And I'm just wondering if there should be something that they do that says, hey, I'm a member, because it screws up your quorum.
Yes, it does.
And so it
True.
would make it better if.
That would be in the bylaws to look at that.
It would be another bylaw change. but
Are
then
they aware of these meetings
They are completely aware of these meetings and
and
they
just
never
choose
come.
not to come?
And they choose
Correct.
not to come.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
Like
maybe-
Ridgefield
You know that.
Junction is never gonna come to this meeting.
So
So-
my other question though was for these other neighborhoods that were unincorporated who are inactive neighborhoods.
Yes.
Is it possible that there are people there that want to be
Well, see,
incorporated?
that came up. We discussed that. Brig mentioned that. and was like, maybe, like, and I know two of those neighborhood associations, at least one of them, went inactive because the president just was doing way too much and no one would take over for her. Like, she was a one-woman show and she couldn't find anyone and she's like, I'm done, I quit, like, this is way too much. And she couldn't find anyone to fill her board, so the neighborhood association went inactive. I know there's been some other people who have had informal complaints about NAC and left their neighborhood associations, left their neighborhood association boards because they were done with this organization. Like, personally talk to them, know that that's what happened. So their neighbors, at least one of them, their neighborhood association went inactive because their board's like,
Well,
we're done.
that's kind of on them, you know, this
No, that is
it
on
shouldn't be
them.
taken personally, no matter what happens here to me
No.
because of these guys. I'm not gonna take it personally against my.
I'm saying they
The
made the
neighborhood
right
I live
choice.
in.
I'm not saying they made the right choice. I'm just saying it's hard to find people to serve. It can be hard to find people to serve on neighborhood association boards. And some of those places, like, I had no reason in my neighborhood to even know that a neighborhood association had ever existed until we were dealing with a major issue. And then we're like, oh,
I got the same problem.
We need
I think
something.
that nobody really knows that there even is a neighborhood association.
that would maybe be
Let alone
something.
they're in it.
I don't know how merrily, I don't know, like in years past, neighborhood associations who have gone inactive, like trying to reactivate them, like the county doesn't pursue people to be like, come join the neighborhood association.
Well, we do try. We have people that
You have the power.
generally like poke at. I'm poking at somebody for Sifton right now. I'm poking at somebody for
Good.
Truman and I'm poking at somebody for Greater Brush Prairie.
Yes,
Yeah.
So-
I'm poking at that same person for greater.
So I think that's part of our neighborhood associations working together.
I've got two people for
Because
Greater Brush Prairie. So
If you're a neighbor of that neighborhood association, if they're, share a boundary with you, you may know someone who lives across that boundary that you can kind of poke at and be like, hey, could you work on this? Because sometimes we're super rural, like 90% of what goes on here doesn't apply to our neighborhood association. We don't have a single sidewalk, a single school, a single park in our neighborhood association. We don't have a single speed limit under 35 in our neighborhood association. Like, we just don't. And so a lot of the things that you guys are dealing with don't affect us in the least. But that doesn't mean that we can't bring something here or we wouldn't have something in common with Shalatchi Prairie, because we do have a lot. So it is, I think that's that conversation and that's that meeting piece that isn't happening in our neighborhood association. Thankfully, our board, even after our issue went away, was committed to staying to keeping our neighborhood association because we did feel like it was valuable. And some of the people that have gone inactive, I think, didn't see the value in it, which is sad.
And I agree with you. I think if you hear of someone, I mean, I'll hear a complaint in the neighborhood and I'll say, well, have you contacted your neighborhood association? Oh, there's neighborhood associations? And then you go into the whole process. And this happened to me over in Sifton. I'm like, yes, you do. And it's inactive. It'd be great if you're really concerned about this issue that you reactivate that. I mean, that's a simple conversation you can have with anybody when you talk to them. If they're complaining about something, just ask them where they're from and see if their neighborhood association is active. And then if not, just direct them to Mary Lee.
And it may need to be defined a NAC active neighborhood association and an active with the county neighborhood association, like Mary Lee's saying. If they've never attended a NAC meeting, do they count for a quorum? I don't know. Like, that's something that, like I said, the committee for the bylaws, like, I think a lot of that, it does need discussed. But we weren't gonna make a recommendation on that as the conflict resolution committee. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Kind of where we were coming from on that, because all those things came up when we were talking. We had a lot.
You had great with that. I know you did.
My 15-page Word document, it was like a little overwhelming. First week.
if you did have those three that never come taken out of here, you'd have a quorum tonight.
Yes.
So.
But we can't change the bylaws
So
tonight.
it's something to consider.
Yeah.
It's
And
something to
Can someone write that down somewhere?
We could find out why they don't come.
Well, that's
But
part of our
like something
recommendations about better communication. We need to have a person, maybe a communications person that does reach out to all of the neighborhood associations, whether they have a board and meetings and they don't come, or they don't even have anything, and get it started.
Or if it's somebody that Marilee's like, kind of like she says, poking at, if one of us contacted them, like, hey, I'm in your neighborhood next door, we would like you to join us for whatever reason, or we could work with you and collaborate on this. And we could have a, community day, whatever they're gonna do, popsicles in the park. You know what I mean? Like, that might get some of those neighborhoods back involved. So Yes, I think that did come up in there.
Just so you
Steve had a
know,
question
just
too.
so everyone knows, the board has pursued doing that and we've not been able to, so.
Right.
That's a great idea.
Did you have something else, Steve?
Well, my recollection of the bylaws in their current state is that every neighborhood association that qualifies is considered to be active.
Yes,
So,
which what makes our quorums are,
Right.
they're
Right,
17, right?
exactly.
Active neighbor association, we have to have 9 for a quorum. Is that correct?
right,
So yeah, that's,
So that bylaws can be changed.
so the bylaws could definitely be changed, be more clear, be whatever
That'd be nice.
on that as far as voting goes.
For instance, the Greater Brush Prairie
Say
is
participate.
inactive, okay? I know somebody who lives up in the hills that's in the Greater Brush Prairie, and I've been picking on her to do something to get started.
Great.
So, you know, we need to do more of that. And maybe Brush Prairie can start coming in.
So that, since we cannot vote, this basically was our recommendations. Our next slide was to take a vote, but we cannot.
I appreciate all the work.
So,
Yeah.
and if we can't even vote to make a committee, can we? Nope.
no,
Doesn't mean that you can't solicit members for the.
So how about that? How about we solicit members?
Can't. vote them in.
I personally, the next couple months, do not have time to serve on that committee, but both Greg and Debbie volunteered to be on that committee or said they would either both be on that committee or whatever.
The estimated time commitment.
Well, we were hoping it would basically be June, July, August. Well,
We
yeah.
could meet on Zoom, so you wouldn't have to get together or something.
So basically, our initial, and Marilee's gone the month of July. So any contact with Marilee, any questions would have to be basically done within the next month. So our kind of goal in that was to get together, look at it, come up with some sort of a draft for the July meeting.
For
So
bylaws.
for bylaws and for a meeting format, both.
I think
And then if we needed to discuss it more than July, or if I didn't know what was on the agenda, or like if the county had something that they were presenting in July and August. And to vote on those bylaws in August. So that's 2 months from now. And then our recommendation of that would be to do board nominations in August, elect in September. So with the hope that maybe we would have more volunteers for the board, more nominations for the board, so that people could ask them questions. If you want to be the secretary, what do you get, like, there could be some dialogue, even if it is just via email that month before elections are held. But that was all just our proposed timeline. The committee would have to essentially make their own timeline.
So you need a volunteer to help go over the bylaws and all that, is that what you're saying?
Yes, for a committee to go over the bylaws and the structure of the meeting format.
Yeah, I'd be interested, but only if I can do it not on Zoom.
I feel, okay.
I think a lot of
I
it,
get that, but I know, I do prefer in-person meetings, but I also need flexibility.
so like when we did our conflict resolution committee, we met twice in person, once on Zoom, and we emailed a lot. There was emails going back and forth multiple times a
During
day.
all the
couple times.
time during all the time that you spent, which seems like a lot, but you got a lot accomplished. Where do you see your priorities of your own household? You got all this thing going on, but this is our priority. So do you consider the bylaws and voting a higher priority than bringing on county members from now until the next of the year?
Yes.
So why
I
don't
would see
we,
from the conflict resolution committee's point, we need to deal with the bylaws, we need to deal with the meeting format, we need to deal with the board.
right? I don't think it's something that needs to be voted on. Realistically, it's just like, here's an idea, run with it.
But I think in order to form a committee by our current
Why
set of
vote?
bylaws,
This is your committee.
we have to vote on it. though,
Why
don't
do you
we?
have to have a committee? A subgroup? This is your group.
Well, true.
Then why can't we, why have Marilee, anybody that's coming up for a meeting, sorry, the agenda has changed. Our priorities right now are getting our own house in order. We do not need a subcommittee. We needed you to come up with this and make it clear for everybody, but from this point forward, this is your committee.
And I
agree
understand what you're
100%.
saying. I think I understand what you're saying. Why do a subcommittee when we could have 3 months of these kinds of meetings where we could have discussions and come up with,
So can I,
okay, go ahead.
part of the reason we didn't recommend that, I think, we didn't explicitly discuss that, was because when those discussions have happened in the past, they have not been civil, they have not been respectful, they have not been done well.
Got it.
So if we can't be respectful civil adults,
Then we need to.
sorry, then we can't, then we need a subcommittee.
It's kind of like,
If you would have,
But that's passing the work off
So-
onto like a few individuals when all of us could take that workload.
sure,
And all of us should take that
So-
workload, not just a few people.
Kirk has a statement.
With our current bylaws, it's gotta, whatever gets proposed by committee has to come back to the whole group anyway, so we're going to have to deal with any changes.
I'm not
So
necessarily.
a committee can propose that,
Okay,
you know,
propose,
everybody.
yeah.
So like
You can propose.
Debbie can jump in too. She hasn't said anything. Debbie, do you have any thoughts? I kind of forgot. You're over my shoulder.
Well, I was wondering, the board can appoint committees. I don't know that we really need to vote. I don't have my bylaws right in front of me, but I kind of like the idea. The majority of us that attend all the time are right here in this room or online. Why we couldn't, just do it at our meetings. Of course, there'd be probably a lot of emails back and forth with a group of 8 or 9 of us. So I think it's a great idea, actually, for all of us to sit down and work on it.
But we're here because that didn't go well. So we don't want to do that again.
The only thing is, that's like having a troublesome student and like a terrorist, the whole goal is to disrupt everybody. So if that individual is a problem, cannot act like an adult, an active member in the community,
That can be done.
goodbye.
Yes. So
and I agree. I think that if we just take them and not handle them all at one time, but we take one. So for instance, I think putting in there who is responsible for what. So is your secretary and your treasurer one? And are they the welcoming committee or the whatever committee? You know what I mean? What do we see? It's kind of like Rig and I and our Terry are going to go and have that because we realized our bylaws needed some tweaking.
Sure.
Right? And so we want to tweak them and then we'll put them, take them back to our group and have them vote on it. But we're meeting so we could tweak it now. Does that make sense? I mean.
yeah,
And that's what we could do here. It's just next month, we just take, this, a portion of this, and this is what we discuss about. Everyone can go home, think about it. This is what we discuss. Then the month after, we discuss the next
Rather than
portion.
reinvent the wheel, we have examples. Every one of our neighborhoods, what do you bring your bylaws? What is, oh, I like this one. I wish we had that in ours.
Yes.
And then you.
And you
build upon that.
mold it to that,
There you go.
Jordan.
I like the idea, guys, but how long before we could actually implement that?
Well,
You just said that we have to have a committee recommend to us that.
No, we don't have to,
this,
no,
right?
anyone can propose a bylaw amendment under our current bylaws, so that can happen. The process would be, it's presented, it's discussed, and then it's voted on at the next meeting, or discussed further if necessary in the fall. So what would happen is if we do it one at a time, which is totally legit, is you just are working continuously on bylaws for a while. The problem is, the challenge is, it's going to take a long time to go through the whole thing. And if that's what the group wants to do, that's what the group wants to do. I just know from past experience that people got tired of dealing with
Yes.
bylaws after a couple of meetings.
How long did it
so-
take Curtin Creek to get your bylaws, at least down where it's working?
Well, right now it's working, but we just need to tweak them. It's
That's
not,
okay, but you had something down in 1, 2 months, 3 months?
yeah, we've had them down for, well, the whole time I've been.
I
here.
think ours, same thing. 1, 2 months, we had a draft, we presented it to our community. Somebody's like, well, I think we should change this. It was changed at that meeting. Now, we had quorum, so it's all those amendments, everybody agree, yes. Listen, short discussions, focused discussions, and we voted on it right away. So
And
within
have
3
civil
months, we had,
discussions. I think we're all grown up enough to have civil
Yeah, absolutely.
discussions
agreed.
about things, and I understand what you're saying, but
it's gonna take us a while to get through that. That's, if the group wants to do that, that's great. The group-
If someone
the group
gets
is-
uncivil or out of hand, I promise you, I will ask them to leave, and if they will not, I will personally escort their fucking ass out. Sorry, sorry, I didn't mean for that.
If I might,
Yes,
point of clarification. NAC bylaws do not allow for formation of committees without a motion and a vote.
Which is what I thought.
Actually, there's no written section that even covers it. So we just went to Robert's Rules, which is the authority that we refer to when there's nothing in the bylaws, and Robert's Rules dictates that a motion and a vote is required to form a committee.
Yeah, and we don't have that.
But we don't need it.
We don't have a quorum.
If we decide just to discuss it, we would not need a committee. That's-
You can discuss it, you just can't
But
take an
the
action.
odds of us having a quorum on a regular basis, historically, it's not gonna happen.
Unless
I-
you
I-
say-
I can only
Used to be
speak
one
to
of the
the
things that
fact
we discussed
that
right away, so we can change
what
that.
our governing
You don't need a
documents.
committee. This is your committee. But to act, once you have a draft done, then at that point, yes, you're gonna need a forum to implement them. But to come up with a draft, you do not need a committee.
What are the issues we're talking about? We're talking about the bylaws, I think are important, and there's certain things about the bylaws, especially the description, the job descriptions are really important. I think meeting format to me is really important.
The meeting format isn't really in the bylaws. I mean,
No,
it's kind of brushed over in the bylaws. It doesn't necessarily even need to be in the bylaws.
No.
It just needs to be written down, I think, in
It can
forward.
be part of a procedure manual.
and,
Yes.
and I'm personally, that'd probably be the first thing we could do is meeting format. And that would be a one-time discussion. I'm pretty sure we could come up with what kind of format we would like. I mean, that seems pretty simple
It
to
is.
me.
Oh, it is, yeah.
It can be, yes.
Yeah,
We do need somebody to record what's going on, though.
Secretary,
secretary.
We
Secretary.
don't
Right.
have one.
We
Well, we
do,
have an
Yeah,
acting
We have an
secretary.
acting,
Those are acting secretary.
acting is
Well,
still
yeah.
a secretary.
If he wants to.
And it's still being recorded. The notes are here.
Right, so if you want to go back and listen to it again, you can go back and listen to it in order to take notes or whatever as well.
Right.
Oh, which I don't think, surprised Debbie, say something about that.
Oh,
The,
I was gonna say, one of my meetings, I was the only one at the meeting, and we had somebody with COVID and somebody was on vacation or something, so I was the only person at one of our Pleasant Highland Neighborhood Association, and I was leading the discussion. So I took the recording and sent it through AI, and it gave me a very nice comments, and it summarized it better than I could ever do.
Yeah.
So if we record it, we could send it through AI and it would summarize it for us. And
notes.
it could give us word for word if you really wanted it, but I just wanted a summary.
The youngins need to teach us how to do all that.
and also too, one of our recommendations, I must not have put it on the slide,
Anyone
was
else?
that when the meeting notes should go out and it's like, probably with the next NAC agenda, these are meeting notes from last time, so it should have a link to the county YouTube. The link to the meeting, because like when Marilee sent us the complaints, she sent us the link to the January meeting. I didn't go back to that email and have the link. And on the county YouTube, it's like a black hole of YouTube presentation. You can't find what you're looking for. So I think it would be important that whether that's Marilee or the secretary.
Yeah, it has to be the link to that
Yes,
YouTube,
so-
not the.
Right, so if it goes out with meeting notes from this meeting, that there's a link to this meeting's recording
Yes.
in the meeting notes, just for simplicity's sake. So if you're trying to go back and find something, you're not digging through a needle in a haystack trying to
There's
find. something.
hundreds of
I
them.
personally would like that to be a standard. When she sends out her agenda, I mean, I don't understand why we don't go over meeting notes and approve them. I mean, maybe we do.
No.
They haven't done it for a long time.
But it should be something that, I mean, every organization I've ever been, you get the meetings in the next agenda, you get it, you go through it, you make sure there's nothing wrong. And you vote on it and it's done. And I would love to have the YouTube attached to every agenda. Is that possible, Marilee?
You're not gonna make quorum when it comes to a vote on anything.
No, I know, but I'm just saying.
Not the way the
and
current bylaws
I'm
are,
talking about
but we
the,
might be able to change it.
yeah, I'm talking about the,
You're right.
when we get our little Zoom thing for the next meeting, I would love to see that information on my email. I really would.
Proper meeting format.
Yeah.
Great.
You know, sometimes, not necessarily this one, but I don't know, sometimes, minutes are only approved by the board. And there's usually a quorum at this meeting, but it would
You're
still
right
go
about
out
that.
to all the members, but I just don't know, you know, that's what we do at our HOA meeting, which, you know, only the board votes on the minutes. Actually, they vote on just about everything, even though we had discussions with the whole group.
But I think if we got more involved like that and had more information come across too, maybe we could get those ones that are active but don't come. And if they see that we really are accomplishing something. I agree. I think when I started 2.5 years ago or 3 years ago, they were going through the bylaws, and I'm telling you, it was the most boring meetings. I'm like, oh, I was gaining nothing from it, is what I'm saying. And when I come to this and want my time here, I want to gain something. I want to be able to talk to the Florida neighborhood and say, what did you do with traffic? Because that's a big issue in my neighborhood.
Right.
So I want to know, what did you do with that? That's a great, thank you for sharing that. The survey thing is really wonderful.
And I think that would be helpful too to know, because like the rural neighborhoods aren't here tonight. Like, I think I'm the only rural neighborhood
I'm
here.
rural.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess, yeah, you are rural. Kirk.
But you guys would have your
You know what I
things
mean?
too.
Like, we also too, it's like, okay, maybe we break in half. And all of you that are worried about traffic, my neighborhood, we're not worried about traffic, I'll be honest. You know, like, we really aren't. So maybe there might be something that we could talk about that would be different.
Right,
But
you're worried about speeding. What I hear from rural neighborhoods
Oh, well,
is
yeah,
speeding.
maybe.
Traffic.
Speeding and
That-
passing,
yeah.
That's what
passing on.
ours is speeding.
Ours is
Ours
speeding.
is speeding,
I got
yeah.
speeding too.
So,
I mean, I almost got myself T-boned where, over on 72nd, I was crossing and there was some fancy car. I mean, must have been going 110 miles an hour over there on 72nd. I mean, I was like, it came out of nowhere. So yeah, we all have that.
Yeah. Everybody's worried about.
But I would love to know about what the rural too. I mean, you
yeah.
know, I think it would be good, but I think the discussions need to be more than at the end of I think it needs to be more.
So I had another thought in regards to the bylaws and stuff, that, you know, this committee had some definite suggestions. And once they were maybe presented as suggestions, approve those, and then have another because it would change some of the requirements of voting and who's doing what, and then go over it again after it was approved. So there might be like 5 iterations over the next year of once we get a little section or a little corrections to go forward, then we could still review it after we got the bylaws changed just a little bit, just a little.
I agree with you, Deb. I think I guess what I was saying is we just break it down. We don't have to go over all the bylaws, but the ones that you recommended are something we could sit through for a meeting and make those changes immediately.
Well, I think right now you have to do it within you have to present it and then have a vote the next month, but
I think it's something you could do.
and then you could change them anytime, you know, if people were interested in tweaking it even more, but.
I was just gonna ask if you were digressing too much and if you had more
And
presentation.
that was because we can't vote, so that's all we had. We got to the end because we could not take any actions. So thank you for checking, but yeah, we're good. So, and we did have, like, we started on my draft 1 of 52. No, I don't know how many there were, but we had very specific bylaw recommendations to start with. And we got deeper into this and we're like, this is too much for the conflict resolution committee. Like, that we felt was not what we should be recommending. So, but we still have those drafts. We can throw them back out there. So, Jordan.
I feel like it's important that we get somebody to talk to the inactive or the 3 who know of us and are not coming. I think every single neighborhood needs to get in here now to do this. It's not a time, if we're gonna redo all the bylaws and decide the rules on how we are going to act, then you don't get to sit this one out, bud. You gotta come in and play the game.
Well, not only is.
Or at least be made aware and get to make your decision to, I'm actively gonna sit this out, or I'm gonna participate.
Not only is the way we handle the meetings important, but we need to have information to make it interesting for those groups to come back in. I mean, if all we're doing is arguing with each other, they're.
You can have like the most interesting, presentation known to man, and if someone doesn't care, they're not gonna come.
And I think that was Marilee's point about the voting. We shouldn't necessarily need a quorum of 9 when we only have 11 neighbor associations that ever participate in these meetings.
I just feel like that, with something like this, they should be at least be made aware, this is what we plan to be doing, and we want you to be involved. So at least let them make their own decision on whether or not they're gonna come in and do this.
Right.
Yeah.
But
They are
they
reached
are
out
aware.
to.
Yeah,
They are aware and they are reached out to. So I just want to make sure that.
Maybe again, or in person, so it feels more personal, so they feel actually invited, or something. I mean, an email is pretty impersonal and can be ignored I rarely check my email list. I really don't do it that often, so, people know if they're like me,
But Kirk, can I ask, is that a bylaw that could be easily changed?
Yes.
And just one like
Yeah.
those simple
Yes.
bylaws like
Yes.
that?
Yeah, most of these things can be changed, but it's gonna take time to go through. I still suggest, like has been suggested, that we do them in small chunks and deal with them, then we can implement them instead of having to wait 6 months or
Yeah, I
a
don't wanna
year
wait 6
to
months.
the end to do them all at once. So I would propose that we do things, take a chunk of time each meeting, whatever that is, an hour or so.
Well, then what do we think is the most important thing to tackle first?
That's a great.
What's the
Well, we
most,
need a quorum.
I think,
getting a quorum. So fix that first. Who gets to vote?
I think with what Jordan's saying, somewhat of a good idea, making this decision, which we can't really do anything tonight, but if we have the ability to make a special announcement of like, hey, this is what's gonna be happening, it's a little out of the ordinary of the normal agenda, that's we need to focus. And then I'd say as far as like where we kind of start with it, I think sometimes bylaws can have areas that impact each other, and so we could kind of go with the easier parts, maybe something that is a very standalone thing, and then we tackle maybe parts that kind of counteract each other and work together between amendments, a little later.
And I think, Stephen, you're the president. I think this is where you make a phone call to each and every one of them, the ones that aren't coming, and explain to them that this is what's this is the situation at the NAC. We need you either to come and attend to help us with our quorum, or we just need to know where you stand. Because I
Or
don't
they
understand.
intend to be active.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those 3 that are not showing up and making it hard for us to have a quorum. I mean, this is what the
Yeah.
president should do anyway.
Marilee, is that okay for Steve to do that?
Can he call them?
That's not up to me.
Okay, so
Well, do you have phone numbers of the presidents or executive persons of the various
No, I need to get
neighborhood
those from
associations?
Marilee.
What about actually being a little bit more proactive and actually just showing up to their general meeting?
I like that.
some of those are only once a year, so that could happen.
Okay.
A lot of them are not very often.
Yeah,
Marilee did get us on each other's mailing list.
I love
do receive
that.
Postcards from the people, which, thank you, Marilee, we appreciate that.
That was, I
That's
believe, Debbie's,
Yes,
Debbie,
That
thanks.
was a
So-
great suggestion.
Yeah.
thanks to Debbie, that's what's been happening.
And it's kind of nice to invite, so I invited Brandon from your guys's to come speak to ours a little bit about what you guys are doing, just so we could. I think it's good to invite
Sure.
each other to talk about what's going on in each of our neighborhoods. I mean, I think the people found it very fascinating. I know my folks did. I know, but I'm trying to figure out ours too. Like I said, I'm pretty new at this, so I'm trying to figure out ours.
So can you bring the bylaws back up, Marilee?
Could I just
Oh, yeah.
touch on?
Yes, go for
There's
it.
a couple of things, because I just got your stuff today.
Yes.
To put into this presentation, and there were a couple of things, because I wasn't part, like I said, I wasn't part of your discussions, but I'm part of your recommendations, and there were a few things that I wanted to bring up that, because some of your recommendations impact me, and so, I wanted to make some comments, about the impact, because there are some impacts, and there's some history there that I think the group needs to be aware of. One of the things on the action plan is I can wrangle to make July a hybrid meeting and have it be here in this hall, and I can be here. I was hoping to have it be virtual only, but I can make this happen. But August, I'm not gonna be driving, so August will have to be virtual only, because I won't be driving yet. So that will impact your meeting in August. September will be back to normal, but August, I'm not gonna be driving yet. So, that will make a difference to your meeting. So with talking about the way that your meetings were happening, I wanted to make sure that was brought up. Because that might make a difference in the way that you're interacting. Because now that we're doing this and changing the way the tables are, this is more friendly and you're.
Whose idea was this?
Basically ours.
So it's, no, hold on, it was two groups, the same idea. The board
Right.
actually decided to try this meeting, and when I came early to help set
We
up,
were already
you
moving
guys were
tables.
already, so
Yeah.
it was
Right.
both sets of people's.
And so, so I know that this is, the preferred way, but I'm not gonna be able to accommodate it in August. So, I just wanted to make sure that that was clear,
Thank
that's gonna be an impact to the plan. Let's see. So the other suggestion that I had is there's not anything in the suggestions about having a discussion on, oops, I went all the way back to the start. About a discussion on the purpose of the group. And there's a talk about the bylaws, but there's not a talk about why are we here? And the bylaws are different than the why are we here? The bylaws are a result of why are we here? And I think that the discussion needs to be had of why do we want to be here?
Do we have a mission statement?
We do have a mission statement.
Are we
We do, but I don't think,
It's aligned.
I don't think it reflects
No,
why
it's
you're
totally
here.
aligned with it.
And,
We
I
try to
think
be.
fairly, I mean, you can.
I don't know.
Well, that's why there's no forum, though.
and so the two things that I had for input were, one of the things that I need is clarification on the path forward regarding what my level of involvement and participation is going to be because of what your recommendations are going to be. And what will follow with that from your discussions. And then I would like to review with the group of the history of the original structure and the significant operational changes that have happened, especially since COVID, and the impacts on workload.
Okay.
Review those with this group, not just
Right
the
here,
board.
Yes, with this group.
Okay.
At the start of this, the idea was there were 50 neighborhoods because East Vancouver was not annexed yet. All of East Vancouver that was all the way over Cascade Park was not annexed yet. And the idea was they were going to establish a 6-member association, neighbor association leadership advisory board. And that group would meet on a monthly basis. And then when they expanded it, and they were going to have an 11-member executive board that met bi-monthly. And the general membership of everyone was only going to meet once a year. So they were going to have an executive board that was what meets here that met bi-monthly. And then the whole group was going to meet only once a year. So their whole board was what you are already. It's pared down, with what you are now is what their whole board was.
And it was an advisory board at that time.
And that was the advisory board.
Okay. It started out as one.
And so I kind of did a table of what it was pre-COVID and at the start versus what it is now. And what's happened is the start of it, the focus of what the neighborhood coordinator did, the focus was on NAC and not the neighborhood associations. And the focus of the workload for the neighborhood coordinator and an administrative assistant was on NAC and that team of the group. And not the neighborhood associations. And most of the workload and the effort was put towards NAC. The work that went out to the neighborhood associations was mostly paper. We sent out newsletters, but those were actually printed and we didn't have software that printed it onto the newsletters. So neighborhoods came in and it was printed on labels and the neighborhoods would come in and help us peel off the labels and stick them onto the newsletters. And we printed out, the different departments would print out all of their papers. And then the neighborhoods would come in and collate them and put them in envelopes. And then the neighborhoods would come in and pick up their envelopes with all their information every week. Because we didn't have the email and stuff. So that's what we used to do way back then. So it was very hands-on. Everybody was seeing each other all the time. And so the neighborhood office, outreach office was kind of the hub and the NAC meeting was the hub. And that was how we interacted. And then we had kind of a middle point where NAC was the meeting hub and we started doing a lot more things electronically. And the NAC webpage was the hub. Then when I came on board, everybody started asking for neighborhood association web pages because it was so expensive to have your own web page. You know, it's like $300 a year, $500 a year to get your own website. And you guys don't have the money to do that. So I worked with the county and we got you guys all web pages. And with that, we're posting your postcards and we're updating those on a monthly basis. And then we're also posting when your meetings are and then pulling that down after the meetings are over. And don't have an admin assistant to help do that either anymore. So you can see that the column that was for neighborhood associations to 2016 is like up here. And then the column that is for neighborhood associations after 2016 is like here. And there's one less person to do that.
Barely, could I add just one thing? About how long have you been on board in this position with outreach?
10 years.
Okay, I thought it was about 10 years.
It's 10 years.
Steve, how long you been around?
About 15, maybe a little longer.
Judy and Dan?
Let's see something. Let's say about 8.
Well, you've been longer now.
Longer than that, I
Dan
guess.
was before you and so these two are together, so they're one.
Okay. Well, I re-upped the neighborhood in 15 or 16.
15 or 16, yeah, I think.
Yeah.
10.
Okay, say 10.
And I've been around as long as these people have. We've had an awful lot of conversation here, but I gotta tell you that I can remember at least 5 years when the only thing we had to vote on was who did we want to have for the employee of the year at Clark County.
Yep.
We didn't need a quorum for anything.
No.
We sat here at the table, we talked about the things. Anybody that showed up was free to talk. Anybody that didn't show up, they just missed a good meeting.
Okay, but
We got a
Roger,
lot of
Roger,
comments.
that's going off track for just a second. Let me finish what I'm saying here. This is like what my workload is, and I
Yeah.
don't want to get off track of that. Because this is how much stuff that I have to do. And I don't want to get off track of that. Because what I don't want to get off track of is some of what we're talking about here, when I go to the next slide, is, oh wait, I guess I took that other slide off. Is that the things that you ask to do of posting things for, putting stuff on YouTube, loading it up onto YouTube, posting it onto the NAC webpage, adding things on for when there's a new president, and keeping up with all those things and making sure that all of that is updated. That is extra administrative work, plus traveling to the meetings, going to the meetings, setting up the stuff. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on what the workload is of the traveling to the stuff, and then also having to be in the office. Because I'm gonna need help if you add more stuff on. Is basically what I'm getting to with having the list of the things that I'm doing. I don't have to go through.
That's my point. We can sit
and-
here, we can talk about a lot of things that are very important that don't require votes, don't require quorums, don't require committees. We can sit here and talk about the things that are important to our neighborhoods. And we don't need to get ourselves very involved in a lot of technical stuff that really, I've seen too many people come and go.
Yeah.
Neighborhood associations aren't static. They've changed all the time.
Marilee, I want to ask you, you do have other duties besides what you're doing with the NAC, correct?
Yes, yes. And the challenge that we've had with NAC is we tried really hard to go ahead and transfer a lot of the secretary stuff to just go, okay, we're gonna hand everything in the secretary over to NAC. Because Holly always did everything for the secretary stuff so that we could make sure we didn't lose the records. So we handed it all over to the secretary, worked fine when we had Barb, we voted in a new secretary, and we lost 3 years of records with the Tina debacle.
Yeah.
And so, because we didn't have the records being copied to the county. So we need to figure out, what are we doing? Is the secretary gonna at least copy the stuff to the county? So has to be some sort of a link there of what we're gonna do with that.
So you're saying that's part of the secretary's duty, just make sure that they are dealing with the county and that.
Secretary can't do that though, right?
It doesn't have to be a secretary.
Well, no, I'm sorry, it has to be a county employee, we've been told. To put stuff on the county webpage.
It has, if we're gonna have it on the county webpage, then the county person has to put it on the
Right,
county
right,
webpage.
right. It can't be a secretary.
You
It
guys,
can't be
could- you
Facebook.
guys could do a Facebook page, and you could do a Google Docs page. I mean, so that needs to be talked about.
I might mention Curtin Creek neighborhood has a Facebook page.
Yep.
And I have been posting pictures like of the construction going on out at the Curtin Creek Park. And I now have 109 followers of the Curtin Creek Facebook page.
Shalachi Perry's
Yeah,
doing the
sorry.
same, and Roger's been doing the same, and they did Google Docs for their surgery or for their survey, that's surgery's on the brain, sorry. For their survey, they did Google Forms and did a great survey, and I don't know, I need to get a hold of Patty and figure out how to do
I know,
that.
I'd love to know how to do those surveys, she did.
So, I mean, there's stuff that we can all learn from each other, and then I did a short thing on getting some stuff on how to do a mission statement of how to make it short and sweet, and I did this so that I could just,
We do have a mission statement.
I
But it could be-
know that we do, but it's
Yeah.
not short.
Sure.
Right.
And
Not short.
and then I also just did a thing on what SMART goals are for if we I just did some bullet points, just as some tips. And then put my contact information on here so that
What's your SMART stands for?
it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic,
reasonable,
and time bound.
Realistic.
I might make,
Realistic is an important one, because then otherwise it's just,
Right.
it's really discouraging.
I might make a suggestion. One of the proposals that the group had was that the board should make the board should create excuse me. I have to look at an apology to, and voice it open. It doesn't have to be to a specific person because they don't know who the person that was making the complaint was, but the board could go ahead and do this.
Yep.
Without our voting it in. The board could apologize for something that happened in the past.
Right, but we don't know what that is.
Well, so we would have to meet with them. One of us from the conflict resolution committee would meet with the board, who the only elected board members are you two. Bill's welcome. But I mean, I think that's one of those things that we would have to meet with you and go over it. I think I would still recommend that you willingly do that apology without a vote. And then one of us.
It's hard to respond to something.
No, that's why. So we would meet with you individually and then we would go over that complaint so you would know exactly what it was. The complainant just didn't want to be broadcast to everyone. So that was the only thing.
And
with
that'd
that.
be something we could scratch on.
Yes, we accomplished something tonight.
Yeah.
Real simple.
Real
If-
simple.
If you
Yeah.
listen to the January meeting carefully, you go to 1 hour and 2 minutes, you can hear what the problem was and the person made the complaint.
It's hard to tell who's talking, but you can hear it. You can't see who it is, but you can hear it.
Well, that's easy enough. So we can do that one without no vote, nothing, we're done.
Yes.
Okay, so then the next ones are, like I said, I think a mission statement would be good. I'm surprised, I don't know.
We have a mission
I
statement.
like
so you
it.
just
Can
gotta
you
look at
send it, Stephen, can you send it out to us? Do you?
It's on the county website. It's on the NAC website. So all of that stuff is right there on the front with bylaws and stuff. If you want it on email.
Well,
we can
this
do
is
that.
what I would like,
yeah.
honestly, is I would like communication from our board to us.
Okay,
I think that's kind of important that if there's something that so for instance, September, I have a wedding in Coeur d'Alene, so I'm gonna be gone the first 2 weeks, okay? But if there's an importance that I have to be here to do the quorum or to answer questions, I would like someone to reach out to me and let me know that it's important that I attend that meeting, which I believe should be the board. Am I wrong?
So.
Yeah, and I think.
Opportunity to designate someone to represent you on your decision.
Yes, exactly. And I would probably talk to Brig, and him and I are both usually here, but I'm just saying, I would like to know that that's an important vote. And if he couldn't do it and I couldn't, I would try to make sure someone was here to represent us. That's what I'm saying. I think that should come from the board, honestly. I think you guys should have all our email addresses. I think that's really
secretary
important.
does.
So they would at least have your neighborhood association email.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
Right.
Yes, that's all
You don't
I,
need your personal
No.
email.
no.
Yeah,
The problem comes is
Big
you have
CNA
to have a vote or something, then you have to have a quorum, and that's where the problem starts getting bogged down.
Well, and some of the thing that has made it really difficult to keep the emails updated is I have to keep a list that's updated of who's active and who the active person is for the contact. That could be different than who is actively participating in NAC. So there's two different lists. There's a contact for who's attending the NAC, and then there's a contact for who the active president and the president, secretary, and the board is for the active neighborhood association contacts are. So there's two separate lists. And it would really simplify it if it was, okay, who's attending for NAC? And this is the people that want to be involved in NAC. And they raise their hand and say, I'm a member of NAC. That would really make things more simple because that would be, I'm the member. And this is who's coming.
Since we're at 8 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
Just
Thank
to kind of wrap up, what we've covered now, what we can do without a vote is we're saying that the subcommittee is gonna meet with the board members to at least address the apologies. That recommendation will be done without the need of a vote. And then going forward, do we need to then wait for a vote to decide on what our first steps are gonna be as far as this new process?
No.
Or we're just,
As long as we don't have a committee,
Yeah.
as long as
Right, so
we're all the
then-
committee, it doesn't matter.
Then, so then the
That'll be
first
the
thing I think what I'm hearing that we wanna work on is start with redefining our mission statement, and then after that, we can decide what our next step will be.
I like that.
I
That's
still
perfect.
feel that we should at least make the attempt to reach out to the rest of the members who are not currently here.
And that's something Steven should do. You should call them and just,
We just gotta get the phone numbers from
Yeah.
Mary.
yeah, that's okay. I think Marilee will get those for you.
And in that contact, you're obviously, in my experience, is you're gonna get reasons why they don't want
Sure,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's good
And-
valuable information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love that. I think that's a great way to go from there. We start with that and then when we discuss what we want to accomplish the weekend, the
We get
next meeting.
reasons
'Cause then-
why they don't want to attend, we'll bring that back. to the
Yeah,
group,
that'd be great.
obviously.
Okay,
Like,
The more that we can do as a community and take that off of Marilee's lap to do, then I think the better it'll be for us because we're doing more. And it's better for her because she doesn't have to do it all by herself.
right.
And we don't have to be so formal about it either.
And then we also don't get told or what to do.
I have another question. How, kind of looking forward, how much time we plan spending in future meetings on this? Do we want to take up the whole time and break it into parts? And then make sure we just still save time for roundtables and really try to emphasize doing that?
I would suggest with groups who will spend an hour on bylaws and an hour on roundtable.
Yeah.
And see how it goes and adjust as we go.
So then my comment is, would you guys like us all to bring materials on what we've been doing? with our
Absolutely.
meeting.
I would like to point out that you don't have 2 hours for a NAC.
To be a half an hour and an hour or 45 minutes.
45 minutes, 45 minutes. And we would,
90 minutes.
because I've heard a lot about it now, so I'm like really excited about
At the
it.
very least, pretty much what I'm thinking is what we'll do is we'll just explain the process we went
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
And then kind of how our community brought that issue to us and then you guys can help.
and the ones that with Facebook pages show how great it is, how many members I had. This is when we started, and as of today, we have X amount of people that follow.
Yeah, and Greg does a really nice.
And then, so someone like myself, I'm only 66, but I'm thinking like, oh, how is it the trouble that I'm gonna get into trying to start one? But someone that already has it, it's very easy, just follow these steps, and that's where your mentorship program can come in.
I mean, I got a
And these have,
Facebook.
these.
Yeah, it would be nice to have something on
Get them
Facebook.
started.
That's right.
Facebook mostly just does commercials. I hardly ever go on it. I used to be like first thing in the morning, but after COVID, that's all I see is commercials and I hardly see any family members or anything, pictures. So to me, that's Facebook's a waste of time and energy, but so if there's something else, I use MailChimp and I have a profile of the neighborhood association. It's not exactly like, it's not exactly like a website, but it's pretty close. I just can't post a lot of ongoing things. I can say what's coming up and my statement and I usually have a little page about the county, how to contact the county and that kind of stuff. But so if there's something else, I would love to learn about it.
I think yours is pretty fancy, Debbie. I think you're pretty downplaying it. I think it's pretty fancy.
Okay. And it's free.
You have to come and tell us how to do that.
Okay.
My other thing is just on this note, as we try to improve our processes, if we're gonna really start working
I'm
together
sorry,
to
can
do.
we just have one conversation at a time?
If we're gonna really try and work on making sure we do our roundtables at the end of every meeting, I think a good thing would be that. With our roundtable, we suggest what we wanna hear next one, so people can prepare materials.
Okay, I thought this was a very productive meeting, but I would also like to motion to adjourn.
Chicken.
All right, did we get a second and a vote?
Well, with second, I don't think.
We need to get a
Does
second.
not require a quorum.
Oh, right? Oh, we don't.
All right, and then close out. Thanks for joining us online.
Hey, Doug.
Feel free to stand back here and talk to each other a little bit.
There you go.
Have a cookie.